What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. So this week is a boxing fan's dream. 3 stacked cards all on different days. You've got the return of Ryan Garcia, Canelo, now Inoue. Amazing cards, and I want to go over my predictions for all three of these cards. But I also want to talk about Haney Garcia 2 and Canelo versus Crawford. So let's dive into the video. So let's start with the Friday night card in New York, headlined by Ryan Garcia and Rolly Romero. I love the initiative here. Going to Times Square, doing an open air event. This is the stuff that boxing needs, pushing past the boundaries, making it more visible to the fans, and I like Turkey's initiative. Now, there's 3 main fights on this card: Ryan versus Rolly, Haney versus Ramirez, and Tio versus Barboza. And let's start with the third fight down. Teofimo Lopez defends his WBO and lineal title against Arnold Barboza Jr. Now, Barboza, I think, is a very solid fighter, doesn't make a lot of mistakes. He pops out his jab, he can fight on the front foot, put the pressure, land his combinations, or you can fight on the back foot and counterpunch. Very, very solid fighter. Now, the difference for me, though, is I think Tio's a bit more athletic, a bit more versatile. He can also counterpunch or fight on the front foot, but he's a bit faster. His counterpunching is super elite. He can time his right hands and his left hooks, and I think that speed difference will win him this fight. So I'm going to go Teofimo Lopez by a very close decision. Next, you got Devin Haney versus Jose Ramirez. Now, big fight for Haney, especially after the whole Ryan Garcia debacle. His chin, it's definitely going to be a concern after all the damage he took. That being said, I think his skills, they're far superior to Ramirez. Way better jab, better straight right hand, better distance control. Probably better IQ, although in the Ryan Garcia fight, he made a lot of mistakes. And Ramirez, he has been slowing down over the last 2 to 3 years. I think Haney, he stays on the outside. Kind of reminds people he's one of the best outside fighters in boxing. So I got Haney by a pretty solid decision. And then in the main event, we have Ryan Garcia versus Rolly Romero. Now, I absolutely love Rolly, super funny guy, but let's be honest, he doesn't have much of a chance in this fight. The only way he maybe wins is making it ugly. He likes to throw elbows and chopping right hands, push people down. If he makes it ugly, maybe draws Ryan into a firefight, he's got a bit of a chance. But aside from that, I think Ryan absolutely tears him apart. Way better jab, faster punching, really good left hook. And Rolly, I think he's a bit undersized for welterweight. I think Ryan clips him relatively early with the left hook, and I got Garcia by a 5th round KO. Now, before I get into the Canelo versus Skull card, I just want to talk about Haney Garcia too for a little bit. This is a big opportunity for both men, but especially for Devin Haney. It seems like after the Ryan Garcia situation and the lawsuit, 90% of people, they want to see Haney lose or they're praying for his downfall. And this is his opportunity to make things right. If he looks great against Ramirez, 9-3, 10-2s him or stops him late, a lot of people, they're going to add some respect to Haney's name. And as for Ryan, he doesn't really need that public support as much. I'd say he's already got, most, if not all of the fan base supporting him. But he did have the Austrian suspension, out for 1 year. He needs to KO Rolly to kind of put a statement that he's still one of those elite fighters. And that would also make the Haney rematch a lot bigger. But now let's get into the Canelo versus Skull card in Saudi Arabia Saturday night. So I won't predict every fight on this card, but I'll focus on the 4 main ones. Canelo versus Skull, Munguia versus Saras 2, Badu versus Mikhailian, and Ajagba versus Bakole. So let's start with the big boys up at heavyweight. Martin Bakole versus Efe Ajagba. On paper, Bakole should win this fight. A little bit more experienced, a bit more proven, bigger guy, stronger guy. But at the same time, he did get KO'd 2 months ago by Joseph Parker. So we don't know how his chin is. He looked overweight. We don't know how his cardio will be. A lot of concerns there. Whereas with Ajagba, he's not super proven, but he's got a good straight right hand, super fast. I would say he's kind of like Deontay Wilder, obviously not as great, but similar style. And I do think that kind of style, it can pose some problems for Bakole, especially being slow, a little bit flat-footed. I'm going to go with the underdog here, Ajagba by 6th round KO. Next, you got Badu Jack versus Noel Mikhailian for the WBC Cruiserweight title. Now, both guys, they kind of had similar paths. Both stopped Makabu to win the WBC Cruiserweight title. And I think Badu currently has the WBC belt. He got reinstated. Mikhailian had the belt, had some legal issues, but this fight will pretty much decide who the true champion is. Badu, he is a bit older, likes to stay behind the jab, got a decent right hook, but he has been inactive for 2 years. Mikhailian, he does have a bit of a similar style, likes to measure with that lead hand, and then he'll let his right hand and left hook go. But you got to go with the younger guy here, especially when Badu's been inactive. So I'm going to go Mikhailian by decision. In the co-main event, we got the Jaime Munguia-Bruno Saras rematch, and this might be my favorite fight of the weekend. In the first fight, Munguia, he was the huge favorite out there in his hometown of Tijuana. And then out of nowhere, he got one punch KO'd by Saras. And Saras, he's not even known for his knockout power. I want to say he had around 4 or 5 KOs before that Munguia fight, so it really came out of nowhere. Now the rematch, I'm sure Munguia, he'll be a lot more measured, stay behind the jab, the 1-2-3 combination. He'll be working on his defense training with Canelo. Whereas Saras, I don't want to say he'll be looking for that one big shot, but he won't be able to outbox Munguia, so he will get desperate, maybe looking for the shots later on in the fight. And I just don't think he'll land it like he did in the first fight. So I'm going to take Munguia by decision. And in the main event, we got Canelo versus Skull for the undisputed super middleweight title. Now, the big question for me is not who will win this fight, Canelo or Skull. It's, will Canelo finally get a knockout, or will it be another decision? He's gone to 6 straight decisions for the last 3.5 years or so, and I think he really needs a knockout. I don't think this fight will be particularly close. Skull, he just has his hands low, looking for counters. Canelo's going to walk him down, throw the double jab right hand. He's going to throw the left hand to the body, the uppercuts. I think he absolutely picks Skull apart. Probably drops him once or twice. But based on the trend Canelo's going, where he kind of slows down in the last couple of rounds, kind of lacks that finishing power and combination work, I'm going to go Canelo by decision in this one. But the reason why I'm talking so much about, Canelo's power and will he go to decision or knockout, it's for the Terence Crawford fight. Skull, he's kind of a walk in the park for Canelo, more of a tune-up for the Crawford fight. But Crawford, he's got great skills. The thing he doesn't have, though, is the chin at 168. If Canelo, he still has that power, if he's able to knock out Skull, he's going to have Crawford more hesitant, more defensive. That'll only make Canelo's chances of victory a lot higher. Whereas if he takes Skull to decision, Crawford won't respect the power as much. He'll be more respectful of his skills more than his power. But that'll allow Crawford to maybe outbox Canelo on the outside, land his shots. So that's the reason I want to see Canelo get a knockout. Kind of to strike that fear into Crawford, have him more hesitant so you have a better chance of winning. Now, by all means, Canelo can still outbox Crawford. In fact, if it does go to decision, I would favor Canelo, maybe an 8-4, 7-5 decision. But he just needs that knockout because he's known for his power, known for his combinations and aggression. And it's been a long time since he's gotten one. I don't want to hear the BS about, oh, he felt bad for Munguia, so he kept him up. That may be true, but at the end of the day, that was a decision. So I just want to see Canelo get a knockout on Skull just to build up that Crawford fight even more. But now let's go to the last card of the weekend. Naoya Inoue fighting in the US against Ramon Cardines. I'm not going to go through the full card. I got Rafael Espinoza winning. I got Emiliano Vargas winning. I just want to focus on Inoue for this video. Now, this is a monumental moment, and I don't even think a lot of people realize it. You've got the number 2 pound-for-pound fighter, a guy who a lot of people say that he's scared to fight outside Japan, but now he's headlining in the US. Not just in the US, headlining the T-Mobile Arena, Cinco de Mayo weekend, a weekend where Canelo has usually headlined. Huge opportunity for him to put his stardom in America. Now, in terms of the fight itself, I would never pick against Naoya Inoue. As long as he's fighting below 126, I don't think there's a man that can beat him. Cardenas, I don't think he's a bad fighter at all. Very solid guy, good left hook, solid power. I don't think anyone can compete with Inoue. The speed, the power, the timing, the athleticism. I think he digs to the body early with the jab and the combinations. Maybe comes up top with the left hook and right hand. And I think Cardenas, he's going to slowly get picked apart. Maybe he fights fire with fire, but that's a bad recipe. And I think Inoue stops him in 5 to 6 rounds. I'll go Inoue by 6-round TKO. And the ultimate goal here for Inoue is to kind of get some of that American fan base to watch his fights in Japan. Earlier today, the Inoue-Akmadaliev fight was finalized for Japan. I want to say September 14th. So if he can get maybe 5%, 10% of the people that watch him in America to watch him in Japan, that's a monumental accomplishment. And if he can get past Akmadaliev, maybe Nick Ball to end the year, or another guy at 122, maybe a Sam Goodman, ultimately, it is building to that Inoue versus Nakatani super fight, 2026 in the Tokyo Dome. But anyways, those were kind of my thoughts and breakdowns for these 3 cards. Amazing weekend for boxing. Ryan, Canelo, Inoue. You guys let me know which fights you're looking forward to or your predictions. But thank you guys for watching. I'm almost at 500 subscribers, so try to get me there. But appreciate you guys, and I'll see you in the next video.